Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Call in the Ring. Mike here with you as always. And this time I wanted to do something a little different that I haven't done so far. I wanted to review or talk about, discuss a documentary. I'm a little late to the party on it, but it's the Hardy's 24 documentary that came out about a month ago, Hardy's Woken. And if you haven't watched this documentary on the WWE Network, stop what you're doing, go check it out. It's incredible. It's this in-depth look at their entire careers, and you really see the rise and the fall, and then the rise of the Hardys again. And even if you're not a fan of the Hardys, you owe it to yourself to check this one out. So I was watching this documentary, and it starts out at the Hardy compound, where we get this big aerial shot, probably from Vanguard One, and Matt and Jeff are talking about their lifelong dreams of becoming WWE superstars. And intercut with this is the highlights of all their matches throughout their career. But the segment ends there with the Hardys talking about how their addiction, unfortunately, led to the end of their careers because they were just burned out, and it led to the end of their WWE careers for quite a while. But it starts with them talking about their dreams, right? So we see them talking about how they played in the woods as kids. We see videos of Matt as high voltage, wanting to be a professional wrestler. They're wrestling on a trampoline in their backyard, and they started a wrestling federation, the TWF, the Trampoline Wrestling Federation, and how that's all they want to do with themselves. That was their dream. And then once again, WWE cuts back in, showing highlights of their career. We see them coming as jobbers when they wear these weird, checkered, multicolor outfits, going from jobbers to members of like the New Brood, and then eventually Team Extreme. And much like any WWE documentary we see, there's always the talking heads, right? So a lot of the people that were close to them are who we see. We see Edge and Christian are the first two that come talking about how when the Hardys debuted in the late 90s and Edge and Christian were there, and obviously the Dudley Boys, their goal was always to steal the show. And we see that through highlights of their matches. They show the highlights of their match from WrestleMania 2000, the triple threat at WrestleMania 17, and a variety of other clips of the Hardys just risking and destroying their bodies, but to steal the show every week. And something I thought was really poignant that I quoted here was WWE Post writes across the screen, Team Extreme was a nickname that turned into a lifestyle, and how they were consistently destroying their bodies to steal the show and to do what they loved. And we cut to Big Show, who's the next talking head we see, and he's talking about how in 2009, when Jeff was at the end of his rope there, he was feuding with CM Punk over the World Heavyweight title. He was on a tour bus with Jeff, and Jeff was laying across the bus, and he was just in so much pain. And Big Show remembers asking him, like, how are you doing? And Jeff tells him, man, don't worry about it, I'm cool. But Big Show says, I know he was definitely hurting. He was lying to me at that point. And that was the first time we started to see Matt's addictions. I think which were better well hidden for a long time. I think people knew about Jeff and his addictions, but didn't really know about Matt. Matt begins talking about how he used pain pills to stay at a high level. There's footage of Matt and Jeff backstage drinking, and Matt looks already out of it at that point to cope with the pain. And we hear Jeff talk about that he left WWE in 2009. Remember, he lost the match to CM Punk, loser leaves SmackDown. He left WWE in 2009 because his addiction just got way out of control. So once Jeff left, Matt was on his own there, and Matt talks about for the first time in his career he had been alone, and what that did to him. We see Christian once again spliced in talking about Matt lying to him about his addiction, about the severity of his addiction. And one of the saddest moments, I think, in this entire documentary, and it just goes to show how severe their addiction became, is we see Matt, much like the other talking heads in this documentary, he was doing a talking head segment for a Jeff Hardy documentary that WWE put out in 2009, and he just passes out. He's sitting in a chair and just falls asleep, just passes out there. And the documentarians there, they're like, Matt, wake up, and he just won't wake up. He's just fucking gone. And Big Show also talks about how during this time he remembers being in catering with Matt, and Matt just passes out on his food. Just passes out on his food backstage. And apparently word of that got to higher ups, got to Vince McMahon, got to other executives in the company, and we saw Matt released in October of 2010. During this time, Jeff Hardy was arrested for drug trafficking. He was getting hundreds of pills shipped to his house through FedEx, which is probably not the best idea. But in the meantime, while he was awaiting sentencing and trial, he signed with TNA. I'm sure we all remember his first infamous stint with TNA. Well, second infamous stint rather. His first one was from like '03 to '05, and we see Eric Bischoff and AJ Styles come, and they're talking about just how difficult it was to deal with the Hardys, in TNA. Jeff talks about how his addiction, even in TNA, began to spiral out of control even more so, and he discusses his shoot video that he did on CM Punk. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but he basically just did this shoot at like a truck stop talking about how CM Punk, your lifestyle is not the best way. And Jeff just talks about how embarrassing it was to go back and look at that footage. Then we see Shane Helms, who's another close friend of the Hardys, talking about how their addictions were extreme. And just like their name, Team Extreme, their addictions became extreme. And WWE then shows footage of Victory Road 2011. Those who are not aware of it, go on YouTube, look at it. But basically, Jeff was defending the TNA World Championship against Sting, and came to the ring high, and the match ended with Sting hitting the Scorpion Death Drop rather, on Jeff and pinning him, and the crowd was highly upset. Sting talks about, not just Sting, legendary Sting, who's had an amazing career, talks about how disappointed he was because he really wanted to wrestle Jeff Hardy. And we see Eric Bischoff, who was an executive at that point in time in TNA. He was like, I guess, head of creative at that point, talking about how, in hindsight, it was a poor judgment call to let Jeff get out there, but he figured by letting Jeff go out there and embarrass himself in front of everyone, it would really help him in the long run. And Jeff then mentions how disappointed he remembers AJ Styles being in him, because remember, AJ Styles was the face of TNA for a very long time. And AJ just talks about how, they brought Jeff in thinking Jeff was going to be this big savior for the company. And hindsight being what it is, Jeff actually did a ton of damage to TNA because of that. Jeff then talks about how he can't watch that footage anymore. It makes him sick. And that was really the turning point for him to get clean. But he says while he was getting clean and getting better, Matt was getting worse. Shane Helms comes in, Jeff talks about it. Matt began posting suicidal tweets about how today was going to be his last day on Earth. He's posting videos in his car speeding. And it was all really to just get attention because he didn't think people cared about him. And he talks about how he kind of realized at that point he needed to get clean. But the struggles of going cold turkey and getting clean, where he was in pain from the withdrawals and he couldn't sleep, and he talks about how that led to him doing more drugs because he was in pain. He ended up getting arrested. TNA releases him, and we see that Rebby, his wife, talks about that the way she got Matt to be clean was she called the cops on him and got him arrested for all the drugs he had in the house. But that didn't work at first. He gets arrested, enters rehab, starts drinking at rehab, gets kicked out of rehab, gets rearrested. And he realized at that point that he was really fucking up, and he had to re-enter rehab. From there, we see Matt and Jeff talking about how they both got clean, how their families helped them get clean. We see King Maxwell, Lord Wolfgang, Senor Benjamin. We see Jeff's family, and he talks about how if it wasn't for his wife, he probably would have never gotten clean. Then we see them at the graveside of their mother. They talk about how their mother would have been so disappointed in them had she been around to see the downward spiral these guys went on. From there, these guys got clean, went back to TNA, and Matt talks about how his drug addiction is what led to the creation of Broken Matt Hardy, because he wanted to create a character where his body was broken down, but that awoke in his mind. And the craziness that we see with Broken and quote-unquote and Woken Matt Hardy these days stemmed from his drug addiction. So if any good came out of it, it created an amazing character that a lot of people love. From there, it's kind of a highlight package, really. We see highlights of the Final Deletion, Leader Decay, Tag Team Apocalypto. Matt and Jeff talk about how fun it was to do these things together, how it revitalized TNA for a little bit, and that's all we really hear about it from there. It's not a ton. And as the documentary starts to come to a close, we see them leaving TNA. They talk about going to Ring of Honor. They talk about coming back to WWE, which if you keep up with WWE, you're aware of all of these things because they've happened within the last year or two. They talk about how it was secretive. They had to lie to the media about coming back to WWE. We see them backstage in gorilla position at WWE at WrestleMania 33. Vince McMahon is back there, welcoming them back. John Cena, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, all of these guys. And like I said, from there it's more recent stuff. We see Jeff getting hurt, talking about the disappointment of being injured, the debut of Woken Matt Hardy, the making of the Ultimate Deletion. They do touch on Jeff's DUI arrest, which happened earlier this year, and he talks about how he was disappointed in himself and he knows he has to make amends for that. And Matt talks about being angry with him. But then, once again, we get a highlight package of Jeff working out at the PC, Matt winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, him returning from injury, and we get a highlight package at the end, closing out the documentary, with just highlights of their careers overall. But it's a great documentary. It's about 58 minutes long. If you haven't seen it, I highly suggest you see it. It's probably one of the best documentaries WWE's ever produced, and it really exposes their drug addictions, and you see how sad and unfortunate things for them became. And it makes you happy, though, to see them where they're at now and see that, even though maybe they're not being utilized as best they should, um, they're in a good place. But that's it for me, Mike. I'm out here calling the ring. Please follow, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Follow Chris. He's not in this video, but he will definitely be making more content with me. Follow us on Twitter, Twitch. All those links will be in the description. And remember, don't be afraid to call in the ring. Thanks.